Welcome, Tech It Up with Jessica Lee. I'm here with John Kerr, who's the Managing Director at Mastering Technical Sales. And he's been doing this for many years, written books. The latest one came out 3 months ago, all about technical sales. The conversation is going to be around best practices and tips and trends. Now, John, I'm going to start off with asking you, what are some of the trends that you're seeing, given that everyone has to be involved in technology, or else they're not going to stay competitive, and that there's a lot of automation and AI now infused in every profession. So what's the impact you're seeing? What are some of the trends?
Oh, the trends and the impact on the sales engineering profession is massive. The low-end part of the job is being automated. So that's things such as RFIs, RFPs, basic standard out-of-the-box demos. There's machine learning, AI being applied to that, which is fabulous because it leaves the top end, the real value added part of the profession, to the sales engineer, which is really, really what clients want for them. So I think it's a great thing, and there's a wonderful future in store for sales engineers over the next decade.
That means the organization has to make sure that they are shifting the training, upskilling the sales engineers so that they can be more relevant. Yeah, I know with, like, say, demoing, for example, there's a lot of simulation now. You get the whole experience of what it would be like without actually having a sales engineer walk through that with you every step of the way.
Definitely. So many of my clients are doing this kind of automated demos, and clients can check a few boxes before they come to a website. And then to some degree, the demo is customized specifically for them and for their use cases. So again, that makes life a lot easier for the SE, because they're not just doing run-of-the-mill, out-of-the-box demo after demo after demo. They're doing more interesting and fascinating stuff, and it gives them time to focus on the business value and not just on the pure technology.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because sales engineers tend to be very technical, and they're brought in by the sales reps. Who wants the technical discussion and validation. But often the relationship between the potential customer, the prospect, and the sales engineer is a very trusted advisory role that they view the sales engineer. So they don't trust the salesperson, but they trust the sales engineer a lot more. So talk to us about that, how important it is, the role of the sales engineer, and it's just not just about selling product, but that's a business relationship in the long run.
Yeah, and that's one of the things, Jessica, that's really changed over the last 10 or 15 years. We did a survey with one of our clients in a consulting company, and we asked a whole bunch of mid to senior level executives throughout the world what it was they wanted from their vendor sales engineering team. The number one thing was, I want someone who understands my business. Number two was, I want someone who can clearly and effectively communicate with me. Number three was someone who can design innovative solutions with my staff. Number four was someone I can trust to do the right thing for me and my company. And trailing at number five was someone with deep technical knowledge. 20 years ago, in the heart of the dot-com boom, deep technical knowledge would have been number one. But now all this consultative selling, relationship selling has layered on top of it. And that's what makes the job so much cooler and fun than it was 20 years ago. Yet the role of the salesperson really hasn't changed that much, other than integrating some new technology and using CRM. So that's, again, I think one of the fun things about being an SE is that the customers really want to talk to you.
Well, do you see a potential elimination of even having salespeople, so that the sales engineer takes on more and more of that business role? So, instead of having sales and sales engineer, where would there be opportunities in which the sales engineer just take over as the primary person?
So there are a few industries, and there have been for quite a while, where the role is blended together, particularly in selling plastics and chemicals and heavy equipment. A sales engineer does both sales and the engineering side. In classic high tech, so software, hardware, services, there's always been that division. I certainly don't see the role of the salesperson going away, because as you rightly said, customers don't necessarily always trust the salesperson. And if I think back when I was a CIO, an IT executive, and a sales rep and an SC would walk into my office, I would naturally trust the sales engineer more because she was there to help me and the salesperson was there to sell me something. And as simplistic as it sounds, that's the way our customers look at it, right? So if as a sales engineer you get too salesy, you actually lose some of that aura of credibility that you have. And within the profession, we call it going over to the dark side. And you probably don't want to do that.
Good point.
Yeah.
Yes. It's like bad cop, good cop.
Yeah, to some degree it is. Yeah, and really good salespeople know this, right? And they work with and they leverage the power and the credibility and the trust that customers have in the sales engineer, and that's a wonderful thing to see.
Okay, so I'm going to ask that in your books, what's new then? What are some of the new findings that you want to share?
So the new findings are really around, it's not just about the technology. It's about linking the technology back to solving the business problems. And I think that's also one of the areas that's changed with the advent of the cloud and everything as a service, even more so. And there's an old phrase within sales called FAB, or the fabulous sales engineer. And FAB stands for features, advantages, and benefits. As sales engineers, we are awesome at speaking about features. I mean, we love features. We play with them every day. We're pretty good about the advantages, which is what a feature does. What we're not too good at are the benefits, which is what it means to the customer, because either that's not the way that we think, or it's so blatantly obvious, how could anybody not see it? So if you're truly a fabulous sales engineer, that helps you link the features back to the business benefits for the client in terms of how they can increase their revenue, reduce their costs, satisfy corporate mission, eliminate risks, all the business drivers. So that I see as the major change that's happening. And companies load up their SEs with technical training. The really smart ones load them up with what we call professional skills, which is not just how to do a demo, but how to do it more effectively, how to do business value discovery, how to interact with executives. That's really what's changed and will continue to change and amplify over the next 4 to 5 years.
Well, that means that the training, I think about sales enablement, and sales enablement tends to be for the sales reps, for the channel sales partners. But
Yes.
What about sales enablement for the sales engineers, so that you make sure they have information about trends, macro issues, and more the business discussions that you're talking about, which I think tends to be information that's fed to the salespeople and not so much the sales engineer.
Yes, so that is actually really the genesis of my company and the book. Having been an SE leader for many years, I was frustrated that I couldn't find anybody to train my SEs, and we always had to sit in the back of the room for regular sales training. Solution selling, spin selling, objection handling, negotiations, and nobody would train my people. And I just got so frustrated about it that one of my managers sitting next to me looked at me and said, "John, if you're so smart but frustrated about this, do something." And so I said, "That's a great idea." And that's why I wrote the book 20 years ago. I had no idea it was going to morph into the company that we now run. And that's kind of humbling. We now deliver 18 classes in 6 different languages all around the world, specifically catered to the needs of sales engineers, because they think, they process, and they interact with people differently than salespeople do.
Well, talk to us about your training program. I know it's all virtual now. So is it in small bites, spread out? What's involved in making a successful program?
Yeah, it's really changed. So it used to be, this monolithic 2-3 day on-site training programs, which are awesome because you could do all these role plays. Fortunately, at the start of the year, we made a decision to heavily invest in virtualizing our training, which wasn't any great insight on our part. It's pure serendipity, but hey, we'll take it, right? So now every single one of our classes is pretty much condensed into 4 90-minute modules, and we'll deliver 2 modules on one day. They'll give the student a bit of a rest, a bit of homework, then they'll come back and we'll do 2 more 90-minute modules. And that's the training. We reinforce that with videos, and we call them booster shots. So the same way you take your children back to the pediatrician and they get zapped with shots for viruses and everything. Same thing applies with us. So it's a way of keeping the training fresh. So that's the new way of doing it. Whether we'll continue to do that, or maybe next year it starts going back into the other way, our clients will drive us and we'll know.
Then tell us about the performance impact then. If you have sales engineers going through these 4 modules that you're talking about, does it take maybe a couple of quarters to see the impact in terms of converting trials or proof of concept into actual closed deals?
So you see different impacts in different part of the sales cycle. Many of the skills that we teach are instantly materializable, in that you can go to a class Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday morning you can go out and just do it, and it will make a difference. And we get testimonials from our client. I got one from a sales engineering leader last week, and she said, I can clearly see the difference in the way my sales engineers interact with our customers, and so can the salespeople. And that's the kind of thing that you want to hear. So many skills around questioning, uncovering business value, visual selling. Don't just use PowerPoint or slides, do something different, makes an immediate impact. And now, since everyone is delivering virtually, you need to be a little different. You need to be memorable, interesting, and compelling. And it's kind of up to the SE to do that.
Right.
So if you do, that's one of the big differentiators, and that's how it makes a difference. So, I mean, the ROI on any kind of professional skills training is massive. It's so large, it's almost embarrassing to speak about it. It's in the thousands of percent.
Wow. I know that not all the sales engineers are up to date on some of the best practices that you have discovered, the trends that you have discovered. So what are some of the immediate tips that you would share with them that they can go out and start changing the way they do business?
Oh, sure. So I'll give you 2, Jessica. The first one is every sales methodology in the world looks for pain and focuses on customers' problems and trying to alleviate or eliminate customers' problems. And that's great, and it counts for maybe 75% of the pipeline. What differentiates a good SE from an absolute rock star sales engineer is that the rock star engineer, she also looks for gain as well. And that's the positive things that can happen once the client has your portfolio in place and is doing great things. Another client of mine jokingly calls that puppy dogs, unicorns, sunsets, and walks on the beach. Right? It's the great things that can happen in the future. And if you can link yourself to a positive emotion in the future, it creates quite an emotional bond. So don't just focus on the pain, always look for the gain as well. And that can help you differentiate yourself from the competition. The second one really comes back to that issue of trust again. The survey shows that if you ask customers who provides the most value during a sales cycle, sales engineers win quite dramatically. If you ask that of middle management, they say that the technical team is twice as valuable as the sales team that they work with. If you ask that of individual contributors, it's about 2.5 times, which is no big surprise. Even if you ask that question of executives within your customer base, it's almost twice as much. So that means that the SE has that native trust, that value that customers look for. And it's a weapon, I think, that sales engineers don't use as much as they should in the sales cycle. So it means there are ways that you can uncover things about timing and budget and competition if you do it in a softer, kinder, and gentler, little less indirect way, and get that information from the client. So don't be afraid to ask the questions. Don't be afraid to utilize that trust in order to gain information about what's happening in the sales cycle. Don't just think yourself as a techie whose job is to get the technical win. You're way more than that. So step outside the proverbial box and keep walking.
Okay, so I assume that some of those questioning, the kind of gentler questioning or like discreet questioning to get the information you need are in the book, right?
Yes, they're in the book, and they're certainly in our business value discovery training classes.
Okay, wonderful.
A lot of time on that.
Well, thank you so much, John, for being on the show. You want to show your book again? Make sure people learn about the best practices and tips that you offer. Thanks for being on the show. There you have it. Take it up with Jessica Lee, John Kerr from Mastering Technical Sales.